Imagine walking into a brightly lit grocery store. The hum of coolers, the polished floors, the familiar glow of fluorescent lights. You step into the cereal aisle, and suddenly you're standing before an endless wall of boxes. Oat-based, low-carb, gluten-free, chocolate-drizzled, keto-approved, heart-healthy, child-friendly. There are so many options, it almost feels like abundance. Almost. But then a strange feeling creeps in, a quiet hollowness. You realize that no matter how many boxes there are, none of them feel like your choice. You didn't grow the grain. You didn't ask for this shelf. You didn't even question whether cereal should be breakfast at all. You just walked in and picked from what had already been decided for you. And that's when it hits you. Maybe freedom, as we've come to understand it, isn't freedom at all. They say we live in the freest era of human history. We can travel anywhere, buy almost anything, express ourselves online, follow any dream. So why does it still feel like something is missing? Why, despite all the options laid out before us, do we feel more lost, more tired, more unseen? Could it be that the very structure we were told would liberate us is what gently cages us? Now some might say, well, isn't choice a good thing? And yes, at first glance, it is. To have options is certainly better than having none. But what if we've confused variety with freedom? What if we've been given thousands of flavors of the same idea while being discouraged from ever questioning the recipe itself? And others might argue, we've never had it better. And in some ways, they're right. Technological comfort, medical advances, connection across continents. But beneath the comfort, a quiet question lingers in many hearts. Is this really the life I chose, or just the one I've been sold? Here in this space, we don't claim to have all the answers. But we do believe in asking the deeper questions, the ones modern life often rushes past. So together, let's slow down. Let's step out of the fast-moving current for a moment and look around, not to rebel, not to run away, but to remember. To remember what freedom once felt like before it was turned into branding. To remember who we were before the world handed us a script. Because maybe, just maybe, the quietest rebellion of all is to stop scrolling, stop chasing, stop performing, and begin listening again. To the voice beneath the noise, to the self behind the labels, to the wisdom that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Let us begin this gentle inquiry together. What is freedom, really? And what does it mean to find your way back to yourself? Not through achievement, not through noise, but through awareness. Part 1. Modern Freedom. A Golden Cage. There's a peculiar kind of silence that falls when we begin to question the things we've always taken for granted. It's not loud, not dramatic, but it lingers, like the hush of a room when the lights flicker for just a moment. That's the kind of silence that arrived for Margaret one Thursday morning. She was standing in the toothpaste aisle at her local store. Dozens of shiny tubes stretched from her knees to her eyes, whitening charcoal, fluoride-free, tartar control, with or without baking soda. Each label promised purity, freshness, a better smile. She reached for one, paused, then reached for another, unsure why. And then, right there between two carts, and a Muzak version of an old Beatles song, she asked herself a question she hadn't considered in over 60 years. Why does this feel like a choice, but not freedom? It may seem like a small thing, but it isn't. We've been taught to equate freedom with abundance. The more choices, the more freedom, right? 100 cereal boxes, 1,000 streaming shows, an infinite scroll of faces, places, things. And yet, why does all this leave us feeling so weary, so empty, so strangely confined? Perhaps it's because the choices we're given are all within a pre-drawn box. We rarely ask who built the box in the first place. Buddhist philosophy speaks to this in quiet, piercing clarity. In the Avatamsaka Sutra, there's a line that says, "Sentient beings are like those in a house on fire, not knowing they are burning." The illusion of choice is like that house. It feels stable, comforting even. But the truth is, we're inside something we didn't design, and the exit is hidden behind layers of distraction. You see, modern life doesn't restrict freedom by removing choices. It does something subtler. It floods us with options, but only ones that keep the system intact. You can change the wallpaper, the ringtone, the coffee flavor, but question the system itself, and suddenly things get very quiet. Social media rewards conformity dressed as self-expression. Career paths are glorified only when they're profitable. Even our dreams, yes, even our dreams, are marketed back to us with slogans and monthly payment plans. And this isn't meant to make us feel hopeless. Quite the opposite. When we finally begin to see the golden bars of the cage, not out of cynicism but out of presence, we begin to remember something ancient, something soft. In Buddhist thought, there's the idea of pratya samutpada, or interdependent origination. It reminds us that nothing exists on its own. Not your thoughts, not your desires, not even your choices. Everything is shaped by conditions. When we believe our decisions are entirely our own, we fall into illusion. But when we become aware of the roots of those decisions, the societal patterns, the emotional wounds, the cultural conditioning, we begin to wake up. Waking up doesn't mean escaping the world. It means seeing clearly, even while you live in it. Imagine, for a moment, a fish that has always lived inside a glass bowl. One day, it begins to sense the curve of the glass, not because it was told, but because it keeps hitting the edge. That's when the awakening begins, not in anger, not in panic, but in recognition. So what if we started asking, who profits from the choices I'm given? Do I actually want what I've been told to want? And if I stripped away all the packaging, all the performance, what would I still choose? Deep down, when no one's watching. Real freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come with a jingle or a slogan. It's quiet, it's steady. It often begins with a deep breath and the soft, radical thought, maybe I don't need more choices. Maybe I need to remember what it feels like to choose from the inside. This, dear listener, is the beginning, not of rebellion, but of remembering. And in that remembering, the illusion begins to loosen its grip. Part 2. The productivity trap. Busy, but never fulfilled. It begins innocently enough, a to-do list, scribbled in the morning sun, a coffee cup still steaming, while the calendar beeps its reminders, a gentle push from inside that whispers, let's make the most of today. But over time, that whisper becomes a drumbeat, and the drumbeat becomes a race. Before we know it, our days become measured by how much we've checked off, how far we've pushed forward, how much we've produced. Even in retirement, the echo lingers, am I doing enough? It's subtle, yet constant, a shadow that follows us through the hours, asking us to prove our worth through busyness. David, a man in his late 60s, once told me that even after he stopped working full-time, he couldn't stop feeling behind. I've got all the time in the world now, he said, with a half laugh. And somehow, I feel busier than ever. His mornings were packed with online learning, errands, charity projects, new hobbies. On the surface, it all looked healthy, but inside, he was tired. And worse, he felt guilty for feeling tired. This is the great irony of our time. We are praised for being endlessly productive, even if it quietly wears us down. The Buddha once taught that desire, tanha, is the root of suffering. But it's not only desire for things or people, it is also the craving for becoming, the craving to constantly be more useful, more successful, more accomplished. It's a thirst that never quite gets quenched. Modern society has cleverly disguised this craving in the robes of ambition. We applaud those who grind. We envy those who never stop. We glorify the sleepless, the restless, the always on. And what gets lost in that endless churn? Stillness, presence, peace. Even leisure has been transformed into something to optimize. Go for a walk, but track your steps. Read a book, but let it be self-improvement. Take a nap, but make sure it's scheduled as mindful recovery. The moment we try to simply be, the voice returns. This isn't enough. You should be doing something. But where did that voice come from? For many of us, it was planted early. Gold stars, perfect grades, praise for performance. Over time, we began to equate effort with identity. If I do well, I am good. If I succeed, I am worthy. It's a formula we carried into adulthood, and for some, all the way into old age. But the truth is, we are not machines. We are not meant to operate at maximum efficiency every hour of the day. In nature, nothing blooms all year long. Even the great forests sleep. Even the moon has its phases. So why have we come to believe that we must be in perpetual motion to matter? A Zen monk once told a student who complained of laziness, "You do not need to do more, you need to do less with more presence." At first it sounds contradictory, but with time, the wisdom settles in. Doing less does not mean doing nothing. It means choosing with care, with awareness, with heart. The danger of productivity culture is not only in what it demands of us, but in what it steals from us. Quiet moments, unstructured afternoons, the deep and healing exhale of simply being. And most tragically, it robs us of the joy of doing something for no other reason than love. So ask yourself gently, when was the last time you did nothing and felt okay with it? When did you last rest? Not as preparation to do more, but as an act of trust in your own enoughness. Because you are not your output. You are not your to-do list. You are not what you accomplish before bedtime. You are a living, breathing soul with a heart that was never designed to prove itself. Every hour, you are enough, even when you're still, especially then. So if today you hear that familiar whisper, "You're not doing enough," try answering with this: maybe I'm doing exactly what I need to. Maybe being is enough for today. Part 3. Identity. Who are you when no one is watching? There's a moment, often late at night, when the world quiets down just enough for an old question to slip in, uninvited, but strangely familiar. Who am I? Really, not the version with a job title. Not the one who raised children, ran a household, served a company. Not the online profile or the neat label scribbled on a name tag at a community gathering. But you beneath the roles, beyond the descriptions. For many, this question first stirs in retirement, when the routines begin to soften, when the accolades stop arriving, when the calendar opens up. There it is, not a crisis, but a soft bewilderment, a quiet wonder. If I'm not what I used to do, then who am I now? Take Paul, for example. He was a teacher for over 30 years, loved his students, loved the classroom, loved the rhythm of the school bell and the smell of chalk. But once he stepped away, something surprising happened. He didn't miss the work, but he missed the sense of being someone. It wasn't the teaching that haunted him, it was the identity that had quietly attached itself to it. We all do this from a young age. We are taught to name ourselves through function. I'm a good student. I'm the funny one. I'm the helper. I'm the responsible one. And as we age, the labels just get more sophisticated, more adult, but they still cling to the same idea. I am what others expect me to be. But in Buddhist philosophy, there's a gentle unraveling of this belief. The teaching of anatta, or non-self, reminds us that what we call me is not fixed. It is constantly changing, like clouds drifting across an open sky. We are not the clouds, we are the sky itself, vast, open, and untouched by temporary shapes. Yet society doesn't like open skies. It prefers well-defined boxes. It tells us what to wear to be seen as stylish, how to speak to be taken seriously, what to value to be successful. And in this performance, we forget that the truest parts of ourselves do not need an audience to be real. Think about how much energy we spend curating our image online and in person. We dress not only for warmth, but to say something about who we are. We share photos not only to remember, but to be remembered in a certain light. Even rebellion is sometimes just another costume, worn to stand out, but still defined by what others think. But who are you when no one's looking? This is not a trick question. It is a return to the you that once wandered without needing a reason. The you who stared at clouds, sang songs to yourself, asked questions just for the joy of asking. That version of you still lives beneath the armor, beneath the roles, waiting, not loudly but patiently to be seen again. And here's the tender truth. Most people go their whole lives never meeting their true selves, not because it's hidden, but because it's been overwritten, layer upon layer of should, must, and supposed to. But now, perhaps for the first time in decades, you have space to listen, space to remember. So try this. Sit alone, no music, no TV, no phone. Just sit and ask softly, if no one was watching me, what would I still love? What would I stop doing? What would I begin? Let the silence answer. Let the heart respond before the mind interferes, because underneath all the scripts you've learned to recite, there is still a voice that doesn't need to be liked, doesn't need to be admired. It just wants to be known. You were never meant to be a brand. You were meant to be a human. And the most sacred journey you can take at this stage of life is the one that leads you gently back to yourself. Not the self others have come to expect, but the one that has always been there, watching, waiting, whispering. Part 4. Comfort. The sweetest trap of all. There's something undeniably soothing about slipping into a warm bed after a long day. The soft weight of the blanket, the hush of a quiet room, the familiar feel of your own pillow, worn to the shape of your life. Comfort, in these moments, feels like a blessing. And it is, but like any blessing, when overindulged, it can become something else entirely, a kind of quiet sedative, so gentle we don't even notice when it begins to lull us away from who we are. When Henry retired, he told himself he'd spend the first few months resting. I earned this, he said. And he had. 40 years of long hours, tight deadlines, and late-night work emails. So he rested. He slept in. He watched movies. He ordered takeout. He didn't rush. At first it felt like freedom, but slowly something shifted. Days blurred. Motivation thinned. He stopped going for walks, stopped reading, stopped calling friends. The things that once sparked joy became effort. And though he was surrounded by ease, inside, he felt a strange kind of emptiness, like a room with too much furniture and no windows. This is the quiet danger of comfort. It doesn't strike like lightning. It seeps in like fog. Buddhist wisdom doesn't condemn comfort, but it warns against clinging to it. In the Dhammapada, it says, "The craving of the heedless man grows like a creeper. He runs from life to life like a monkey, seeking fruit in the forest." Craving, whether for pleasure, routine, or certainty, can bind us just as surely as fear or anger. Modern life makes comfort irresistible. Why walk when you can ride? Why cook when you can tap a screen and have food arrive hot at your door? Why confront uncomfortable thoughts when there's always another video, another feed, another distraction to scroll through? We've been sold a version of life where friction is the enemy. But here's the paradox. Friction is where growth happens. It's where the muscles stretch, where the mind expands, where the soul finds shape. No seed ever became a tree without first breaking open in darkness. No lotus ever bloomed without pushing through the mud. But when everything is smoothed out for us, when every hunger is fed instantly, every silence filled, every challenge outsourced, we begin to forget how to wrestle with life. And in doing so, we forget how to live. Comfort can be a soft trap, not because it is bad, but because it is enough to make us stop reaching. It whispers, why try? Why ask? Why grow? Isn't this good enough? And if we are not careful, we will answer, yes, even as something deeper inside us quietly fades. The Buddha spoke often of the middle way, not indulgence, not self-denial, but the space in between, the place where we rest, but not rot, where we nourish, but do not numb. That middle path is where aliveness lives. So let us ask ourselves, when did we last choose discomfort? Not because we had to, but because we knew it was what we needed. When did we last welcome a challenge, not for its reward, but for its sharpening effect on our character? When did we last say no to ease and say yes to something uncertain, awkward, or new? True aliveness often begins on the other side of convenience. A walk in the rain, a vulnerable conversation, a hobby we're bad at, but love anyway, a risk that might not work, but might just awaken something we forgot we had. Comfort is not the enemy, but unquestioned comfort, that is where dreams go to sleep. So maybe in this chapter of life, the invitation is not just to rest, but to rise from the soft couch of complacency, to stretch again, gently, tenderly, towards something that feels unfamiliar, but deeply real. Not because we need to prove anything, but because we want to feel something again. Because perhaps what the soul craves most is not comfort, but contact with the raw, unpredictable, beautifully unfinished nature of life itself. Part 5. Moments of Stillness. The quiet return to self. There is a peculiar kind of silence that visits just before dawn. The house is still. The world hasn't quite stirred. You sit, maybe by the window, cradling a warm cup of tea, and for the first time in what feels like days, maybe weeks, no one is asking anything of you. There are no deadlines, no buzzing phones, no expectations, just the slow breath, the early light, and you. And yet how many of us can sit in that stillness without reaching for something, anything to fill it? It is in these quiet spaces, free of noise and agenda, that the real self begins to surface. Not the self we show to the world, not the polished self, the clever self, the one with answers and plans, but the original self, the one we knew before the world taught us who to be. Grace, an 82-year-old widow I once spoke to, told me something I've never forgotten. When my husband died, she said, the silence in the house was unbearable. I kept the TV on all day, even if I wasn't watching, just so it wouldn't feel so empty. She paused, and her voice softened. But then, one afternoon, I forgot to turn it on. I sat with the silence. At first it hurt. It felt like loss. But then, something else emerged. A voice I hadn't heard in years. My own. Stillness has a way of doing that. At first it feels like absence, but it's not. It's space. The same kind of space that allows a garden to breathe, that gives stars room to shine, that lets the mind finally hear its own whisper. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha offers a profound teaching on mindfulness, the art of being present with what is, without judgment or distraction. He teaches us to observe the breath, the body, the thoughts, just as they are, not to fix them, not to analyze them, simply to be with them. It sounds simple, but in a world addicted to movement, it is one of the most radical acts of all. We are so used to doing, we wear our busyness like a badge. We fill even our free time with tasks, organizing closets, checking emails, catching up on things we can never quite catch. And yet when we pause, truly pause, we touch something ancient inside us, something sacred. Stillness is not inactivity. It is attention. It is noticing the way the sunlight warms the edge of the table. It is hearing the sound of your own breath and realizing it's been with you all along. It is watching your thoughts come and go like birds in the sky without trying to catch them. This kind of presence doesn't shout. It whispers, and to hear it, we must first be willing to lower the volume of the world. Try it sometime. Sit in a quiet room. No distractions. Close your eyes. Breathe. Then ask gently, what part of me have I been too busy to hear? What do I miss about myself? The answers may not come immediately, but trust this, they are there. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need to become someone else to return to yourself. You don't need to move to the mountains, or meditate for hours, or read ancient scriptures. You simply need to listen, to carve out small moments each day where nothing is demanded of you, not even improvement, just being. Because stillness isn't a luxury, it's a remembering. And in that remembering, we reclaim what the noise has tried to bury, our quiet joy, our inner clarity, our sacred worth. Not for what we achieve, not for what we produce, but simply because we are. And in that, dear friend, you are already home. Part 6. Awakening, the gentle power of a mind that sees. There is a moment in every life when the fog begins to lift, not all at once, but in slow, tender layers. It might happen in a quiet room, just after the news has been turned off. It might happen while staring out a window on a rainy morning, your tea grown cold from thought. Or perhaps it happens in the middle of a conversation you've had 100 times before, when suddenly you hear yourself say something and wonder, why do I still believe this? That moment, that subtle inner pause, is where awakening begins. Not the dramatic kind we read about in spiritual books. Not lightning on mountaintops. Not voices from the heavens, but the soft, barely audible click of recognition. I've been asleep, and I didn't know it. For years, maybe decades, we live according to rhythms set by others. We chase dreams we didn't question, adopt beliefs we didn't choose, carry expectations we never asked to hold. We play the roles, parent, partner, provider, achiever, with such commitment that we forget there was ever a time when we were simply us. And yet as we grow older, life begins to make space. The roles begin to release us. Children grow up, careers wind down, the world gets quieter, and so finally, we can hear. We begin to see how cleverly the system worked. It didn't chain us with iron, it wrapped us in applause. It didn't silence us with force, it drowned us in noise. And it didn't stop us from waking, it just kept us busy enough to forget we were asleep. Buddhist wisdom tells us that ignorance is not simply not knowing. It is mistaking illusion for truth. And once you see the illusion, really see it, it can never fully deceive you again. It's like this. Imagine living your whole life in a beautiful theater. The scenery is rich, the lighting perfect, the roles are convincing, you applaud, you perform, you believe. Then one day you stumble behind the curtain and see the ropes, the pulleys, the painted backdrops. You don't hate the stage, you just can't be fooled by it anymore. That is the gentle power of awakening. It doesn't turn you against the world, it simply removes its power to define you. And once that power is gone, what remains is presence. Not performance, not pretense, just presence. A presence that no longer asks, what should I do next? But rather, what is true for me now? A presence that sees through the endless striving and instead asks, what can I release? A presence that no longer needs to prove, but simply chooses calmly, wisely. This kind of seeing is not about rebellion, it's about return. Not about shouting no to the world, but whispering yes to the quiet within. In the Lotus Sutra, there's a parable about a poor man who wanders for years in search of riches. Unbeknownst to him, a friend had sewn a priceless jewel into the lining of his robe long ago. He had carried it with him all along, but never stopped long enough to notice. You too carry something within you, not something to be earned, not something to be taught, but something that simply is: awareness, clarity, freedom. And the moment you begin to look inward, not with judgment but with curiosity, you begin to reclaim it. You begin to remember what matters, not what sparkles, not what earns applause, but what endures, what softens the heart, what brings peace to the soul. And here's the beautiful and perhaps dangerous truth. A person who sees clearly can no longer be manipulated. They don't follow the crowd. They don't chase shadows. They don't live to please. They live to be whole. And the world, oh, the world may not know what to do with someone like that, because someone who sees, truly sees, cannot be bought, sold, or swayed. They move differently, speak more slowly, live more deeply, and in doing so they become something rare, not louder, not richer, not more powerful, but free. Conclusion. Returning home to what was never lost. So here we are, at the quiet edge of all we've explored together. We began with a question: why does life feel empty, even when it appears so full? And slowly, piece by piece, the answers emerged, not as facts, but as quiet recognitions. We saw how modern freedom, wrapped in shiny options, often hides the truth that most choices are made within limits we never questioned. That true liberation is not about having more to pick from, but about asking why we're choosing at all. We looked at productivity and how our culture has turned busyness into identity, how we've been conditioned to equate our worth with our output, forgetting that even in stillness, we remain enough, perhaps especially in stillness. We peeled back the layers of identity and asked the sacred question: who are you when no one is watching? Beyond roles, beyond labels, beyond performance, there lives a self that does not need to be proven, only remembered. We sat with the lure of comfort, how it gently numbs our longing, our hunger, our drive to grow. And we remembered that discomfort, when chosen wisely, is not punishment, but a portal into newness. We learned that stillness is not the absence of movement, but the return of attention. That in silence, something ancient stirs your own voice, the one beneath the noise. And finally, we arrived at awakening, not as a thunderclap, but as a quiet seeing, a gentle noticing of what's always been true, that you were never as lost as you feared, just distracted, just disconnected, but never broken. So now, dear listener, I ask you, when was the last time you truly chose, not from a menu, but from your own knowing, What would it feel like to live without performing, to act without proving? Who are you? Without the roles, without the routines, without the constant needing to be something. This moment, this very breath, is an invitation, not to become someone new, but to return to who you've quietly always been. Not to escape the world, but to see it with fresh, unclouded eyes. Not to withdraw, but to engage with clarity, with freedom, with truth. And you don't have to do it alone. Here at Quiet Wisdom, we walk this path slowly, together. We ask the soft questions. We sit in the silences. We return, again and again, to what matters most. If this message touched a quiet place within you, I invite you to stay with us. Subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone whose heart might be longing for the same peace. And most importantly, take a moment after this ends, not to scroll, not to move on, but to simply sit, to breathe, to feel what's left in the stillness. Because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is nothing, and in that nothing, everything begins. So may you walk gently today, with eyes that see, with a heart that listens, and with a spirit free from illusion. Welcome home.